Oh.
Player on each team allowed to even touch the mouse. They are the person that makes the final decision.
Was? Wollte mich gerade verarschen? Nein. Fick you. Was war das denn? Was war das denn gerade für eine Verarsche?
Team.
Whereas here, never happens. You
To even touch the mouse. They are the person that makes the final decision. If they disagree with their teammates, it's their call.
Yeah, you can call them a moron, but you are not allowed to touch that mouse.
Yep.
They have the final say, which, you know, a lot of
Was für ein
players,
Sandwich?
when you have so many good players on a team, that can almost
Krieger
work
gegen
against you in a way that you
Hexenmeister.
have such strong opinions bashing up against each other. If you have one
Yay.
clearly strongest member on the team who's calling the shots, then it can be a little bit smoother.
Right.
We'll be interested to see how the communication works between these teams. As we can quite clearly see, to get this game rolling, Singapore keeping that skull. This is pretty much one of the primary ways that you are hoping to just win this game right at the start. You may not be winning in fatigue, but if you can pull out a couple of Void Lords, Doom Guards right at the start of the game and smoke them down, you're usually in a pretty good spot.
Most important thing for the warrior is actually to find that weapon removal to prevent the skull from doing its things. If the warrior can prevent Doom Guards from doing anything all game, then that puts them in a great spot. They end up having to tempo out the Doom Guards to have even any shot of winning whatsoever, because if they're just letting the Void Lords die, then Gul'dan gets weaker.
And even though at the moment Bulgaria do not have access to that weapon destruction quite yet, of which we can see they are running just the one Glutton Zeus in their deck. Although they don't have the weapon destruction yet, they've got a good amount of removal. Even if there are Doom Guards and Void Lords fall from their hand, Shield Slam, Super Collider, should be doing a pretty good job, I think, of just clearing up the board, making sure they're not taking too much damage.
Nothing particularly exciting from the Discover there, but Gemstone Golem, it's the strongest card, it's got the biggest numbers on it, seems good to me.
I like it a lot. I think this is a not too often acknowledged weakness of Q-Block, is the single target removal. As soon as you start falling behind on board, it can actually be kind of difficult to pull it back, because against the likes of Zoo, Odd Paladin, Odd Rogue, whatever, you Hellfire, you Defile, and you've got back the board. But against an Odd Warrior, when they're playing Diamond Matriarch, Gem-Studded Golem, Baku itself, potentially, you really do start to take quite a bit of damage if you're not careful.
Katsukuri is amongst the highest scoring players when it comes to HCC this year, with a respectable 87 points. Freaky, one of the highest for Bulgaria as well, he has 40.
Right. As now the plan for Singapore, I'm sure, will be coming together with the non-tap on the previous turn, probably leading up to a coin skull on this turn, unless they want to try and pull off, you know, the fatigue plan, where they go for a coin Gul'dan a turn earlier just to get every single turn of hero power activated as soon as possible. Is worth thinking. But when they have 10 cards in hand at the moment, they can't even go tap Doomsayer on this turn.
It's a very risky game to play, planning to go for the fatigue game early on, because again, against the Odd Warrior, they're gaining 4 armor every single turn, you're dealing 3, you're not getting there through the hero power alone.
Yeah.
Freaky will have more resources later on in the game after all of the shuffles. That's just not really how Singapore want to win this, but there's no Doom Guard present in hand. So even if they do get the skull going off, it's going to be summoning Void Lords, and that's not what they want at all.
It's not perfect, but it's not bad. Like, Warriors struggle at dealing with Void Lords. They don't want to use a Shield Slam on it. If they silence it, you're very happy because they're not silencing your cubes. And what this play to me from Katsukuri signifies is he thinks Doomsayer is not very useful in this matchup. He's just playing it to buy them a turn and lead into the skull. Whereas I think if he sets up a Void Lord and his opponent starts getting ahead on board, there could be some value with the Doomsayer later on.
Alright, Dark, first crazy question. Is Azalina actually looking okay over the next few turns? Like, that's a good hand from Singapore, and Bulgaria's hand isn't actually premium yet. So maybe they could just play it. Get Gul'dan, get some Void Lords,
It's worth considering. Like it's about how far behind in tempo they think they'll be, because the fact that by playing Zola, they don't copy the skull, that effect is permanently in favour of Katsu currying up, which means if they play 7 mana a 3/3, and their opponent has a bunch of demons swarming down the board, and they lose all their removal, that's really bad. Whereas with their current hand, you know, they've got Reckless Flurry, a Shield Slam, I don't think it's that bad. I think this is kind of the hand they want at the moment, short of some weapon destruction.
Faceless Manipulator as well. One of the things Hunter is really emphasizing to us is that it's very versatile in this matchup.
Oh yeah.
If you're copying a giant and then shield slamming it, that puts you ahead. If you're copying a cube that's got Void Lords or Doom Guards in, that's putting you ahead. Like that card is capable of doing a lot of different things. Even just copying a Void Lord, and that's it. Like that's fine.
But that's what you have to be careful of in this matchup, is saying that Faceless Manipulator is fine, because so often against Cube Warlock, the biggest threats of your cards isn't actually playing them, it's the threat of playing them. Like the fact that if you play all your silence cards, all of a sudden they can just go Cube, Prince Howled around, they don't have to Dark Pact it, they make a million Doom Guards and you just die. Whereas if you save back the Faceless, save back the silence, be as greedy as possible with it, they will start to make less greedy plays themselves, just because they're afraid of being silenced or Faceless Manipulated.
But really, as we've been saying from the start, Bulgaria, they needed that weapon removal. They need to prevent the Doom Guard from being summoned in the first place. They want to force the Doom Guard being played from the hand.
Yeah, very much so.
It's a really interesting state, because Katsukari also has all these Void Lords everywhere, which means lots of Void Walkers, which again, as we said before, that does mean a weak Gul'dan. So maybe the lack of weapon removal doesn't even matter too much for Bulgaria at the moment.
It's not good.
It's not great, but it's not as awful as it could be.
Yeah. If it was against the likes of Control Warlock, where they're running Rin, then you actually start considering leaving the skull up.
Yeah.
It pulls out Azari and all that nonsense that gets into. But against the good old Cube Warlock, you're not afraid of the fatigue game plan. You are afraid of just being beaten down. Wow.
Zola the Gorgon being played on the gem-studded golem, okay.
Sounds surprising.
It's not something you see every day, but it makes sense. Like you said, gem-studded golem is a great pick from the Stonehill Defender. It's got a lot of stats.
Yeah.
Singapore lacking the removal, just adding an extra one to the hand seems good.
I agree that Gem-Studded Golem is good right now. Like, it's a good card to discover. To copy with Zola. I just wonder if something later on would be more useful.
Yeah.
If you can go for Owl and then you Zola back the Owl, that's a lot of silence that you're adding through to your deck.
I mean, there are a lot of good targets for Zola in this
Big
deck.
time.
Even Zolaing something you faceless from the other side can be like a Mountain Dragon or something can be good. Dynamatic can be great. Zola. There's so many good targets. So going with this, it felt a little bit preemptive to me.
But at the same time, the rest of their hand really does very, very little indeed. Outside of that, it was really looking for a mech with a Omega Assembly, which is worth considering before you're at the full 10 mana. You can't afford to be all too greedy in this matchup.
It's starting to get scary.
Bloodwood played from Singapore as well, even working beautifully around the mind control set. And it is starting to look scary. These Doom Guards, if they're not cleared off, not only will they just beat Freaky down over the next few turns, he could go Prince Tal'Daram on a Doom Guard, which adds another one to the pool to resurrect with Blood Reaver cooldown.
Yeah, it's getting out of control. Even with the few Void Lords that have been summoned or are being summoned, it does look like there's going to be a lot of Doom Guards in the long run now, and Prince Tal'Daram would just increase that. So Bulgaria have to focus on removing them, I guess. They could Reckless Flurry. That would just leave the Void Walkers on the board. They could... Oh, it's a really hard turn.
Yeah, it's awkward here. And they, like, the way they've been playing it so far, they've been developing minions before using their removal spells, which is an understandable line of thought. You always expect it to get worse later on. So I wouldn't be too surprised for them to see Faceless Manipulator on the Void Lord, as that has been kind of keeping in line with their play so far. Here, however, they are finally saying, okay, this is scary enough. I'm throwing down some of that removal, because later on, there's a very good chance that a cube hits the board, and then all of a sudden, your Reckless Flurry really doesn't do much to mitigate the damage on the board whatsoever.
Playing out the second Super Collider as well, Katsukari's one and only weapon removal is gone, so Freaky can play this weapon as greedily as he wants to. and just hold that back.
Yeah, you're really trying to use that for like 2 mountain giants on the board after they faceless one of them or something is the dream. But just using it to clear up here will be, to just tickle the board back into your favour.
So we just found out that off stream, China just beat Hong Kong 3-2.
Oh wow!
In the winners match.
So China are through to tomorrow.
They are through to the semi-finals.
Wow.
China really making a splash in this year's Hearthstone Global Games.
Yep, they've had little success in HCT, but it's good to see when you take the best of the best and put them together, they can make some magic happen. Singapore again, just really a crossroads here, where I think that the main debate I imagine they're having is how much do we play for aggression versus how much do we play for value? Because make no mistake, they need to be the aggressor in this matchup. In fatigue, they will not be winning this game, so they need to do stuff. Whatever it is, they need to be pulling ahead on the board, which they are at the moment. They are already in a good spot, pushing a bit of damage. But they need to then make the argument, do we play all our cards really quickly? Is that the best way to win the game before fatigue? Or do we play it a little bit greedier? We still win before fatigue, but it's a little bit slower. Good amount of pressure each turn, not overextending.
Yeah.
And that seems to be what they're going for.
They're kind of just hedging, right? They're taking the middle ground. They're dealing more damage, slightly more damage than the warrior can heal every single turn. And I guess they're hoping that they can just keep that up for the foreseeable future.
And like I said, I suppose on that particular turn, that wasn't the biggest decision, because outside of just tapping and passing, they could have played Umbra or played Tal'Daram. You want to be greedy with those cards. Those are the really explosive cards that you want to make some magic happen with. So now Coin Gul'dan would summon 2 Doom Guards and a Void Wolf, I believe, in terms of demons that have died so far, which is a very respectable amount of damage if you wanted to get that rolling right now.
The board falls into place perfectly there, doesn't it? It's not bad at all. Can put Freaky straight down to 11.
Yeah. The problem with that play is if you didn't have the librarians in hand, then you might start to lose the combo activators in your deck. Like if you all of a sudden aren't drawing cubes, you can't tap through to it, which I think is what Singapore is afraid of here, is that if their board is cleared off, their hand does nothing. After the Gul'dan resurrection, there were no threats left in their hand before they drew this mountain giant. So clearly they want Bulgaria to kill off their demons first, then get an even more impactful resurrection afterwards.
That mind control tech could do some wonderful things. Mind control tech, get the Void Lord, then faceless the Void Lord. It's a lot of defense there.
Yeah, that's a pretty big wall you're putting up there. You got to be a little bit careful on Bulgaria's side about using your trump card in just making a massive swing onto the board in your favour. You don't want to use all your resources at once, of course, because then you get Godfrey. Is the real fear there, I think. But they are. It looks like going to be heading towards a mind control tech to give them the best chance of stealing the Void Lord or the Giant.
Yep, it's going to be all 50-50 chance for a good minion here. They get the Void Lord.
That's pretty nice.
And that's enough, right? Like that's enough of a defense for now. They don't really need to play the faceless, like I said before, because there's not really much power on the board for Katsukari.
That swings the resurrections quite drastically. I'm trying to figure out if that's good or bad for Singapore in terms of the resurrection, because they get less Void Lords, sorry, Void Walkers to be resurrected. I think it's bad. Like they would rather have had a Void Walker stolen, because then the Void Walker doesn't die. But it's not the end of the world. Is the point I'm trying to get across for Singapore.
I mean, they'd quite like to be able to connect to the face here, but
they would love to. I will agree with you there.
But that's looking somewhat difficult.
And still, they just haven't drawn the cards from their deck that do the explosive turns. They need Q. They need more more demons to be drawn. The remaining Doomguard would be lovely with this hand. Just to get more demons resurrected with cooldown.
But both cubes lurking in the bottom half of the deck. It's not what they wanted in this matchup.
Look.
Godfrey's going to get played now, which means that in the future, Bulgaria don't need to worry about the king of all board clears.
Yeah, they can have much more liberty, I would say, to go nice and wide on the board with their mechs they got, which are really not that bad. You know, they're not the premier board control card, like maybe a bulldozer to push a little bit of extra damage. But taunts, just rusty recycler.
Dynamic here, just outright on its own with his battle cry. They have to play around Gul'dan a little bit now. They don't want to take two Doomguards to the face.
Yeah.
But they're not dead yet, and they know they're not dead yet.
While you were
Yay.
talking about the potential of Azalina earlier on, I was saying, you know, there had been an amount of removal back then, they really didn't want to go for it. Now they've alleviated the pressure.
Jetzt habe ich Longbauer auch auf 5 Sterne.
Big redevelopment onto the board. I think they could start to think pretty carefully about Azalina.
It's a little bit worse now that all the demons have been played, because like if they're getting a cooldown, it's literally just switching out the hero power. And with Bulgaria's game plan, I'm not sure how much better the cooldown hero power is to tank up.
And also for where Bulgaria sat, if their opponent have Blood Reaver cooldown, they'd probably just play it, which they are going to.
Right.
So if they Azalina next turn, there's basically no way they get cooldown, because if they have it, they just play it every time.
Yeah.
But cooldown would have actually been really nice for Freaky. He did get back a Void.
Freaky's in trouble here. He needs a way of clearing this board immediately, or Katsukari could, in theory, go ahead and play a cube and start to do cube things. There isn't a way of clearing this board. Reckless Flurry with 4 armor just isn't enough. You tank up Shield Slam and Reckless Flurry, I guess, to deal with one of the Doomguards.
Hattest du das hier schon gemacht vor den Beinen?
Nee.
Mach das, damit man es nicht wegschmeißen kann. Mal
Even then, you only take it down to 5 health by with both your minions.
It's not a clean kill by any means.
Ziliax, however, is a huge amount of life gain, if you wanted to go for that. Or just Aethelus on the Void Lord is a big old taunt.
Could even go Coppertail Ziliax. Which would give the big old minion rush and lifesteal.
It's true.
This is the okay, we can't clear the board, let's just try and get the best defense we possibly can. Try and outlive this assault.
Yeah, this makes a good amount of sense to me. They are realizing that they are just very, very close to dying.
And Katsukari needs to find Cube. Needs to find Cube right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they just throw down the Librarian.
Not running a Spellbreaker in their list anymore, as the Cubot list is getting a little bit crowded for cards. You don't really have room for silence at the moment. And like you said, he really needs to find something to do with his hand. But again, it's just all the cards that don't do enough.
Meine Fresse, was ein Geschlachter.
He has Hero Power Coin Hellfire, which I believe just gives him exact lethal with the 60.
No way.
That's it.
Die alle mit ihren tollen Goldi-Karten, ey.
Well, who needs
Leck deiner
Carnivorous
Marsch.
Cube? I guess as Katsukari and Team Singapore.
Voll goldig
they
und
get
da
there,
hat
they've
Singapur
taken their first
gewonnen.
win in what Team Norway just told us was an unfavorable matchup. They must be feeling very good about.
Komm.
As well.
Wer das hier schon? Hier kein
The way
Arsch
you
hier.
are always going, I
So, der Jäger gegen den Priester.
the Mechathune or Bulgaria on the Mechathune priest as opposed to
Ha.
the control priest version. But like you said, this version of the deck, it's a pretty standardized deck list at this point, and it's a pretty nice way to get things rolling for
Ja,
Singapore.
man steht nicht hier von Europapark die Münze, Mali. Die lag auf dem Boden.
Ja.
Ja, die lag auf dem Boden. Und alle drauf da. Ja. So achtet der drauf, wa?
So what's the game plan for the hunter here, do you think, Darren? Are
Lass
they
die mal
trying
hier
to
bei
deal
mir
as
mal.
much damage as quickly as possible? To what extent do they need to hold their threats back for after the psychic scream?
I think you want to be playing pretty aggressively as Silence Thor. He's already got in hand Arena, which is probably the cornerstone of this matchup. Like, when I said that the priest has all the answers they need, that's later on. They have Psychic Scream, which is the main tool they're using to just negate any death rattles, shuffle.
Aber der stellt alle draußen hin und lässt alles verdrecken, wisst ihr?
But the devil swords that come out the devil sword egg
Abwischen ist auch nicht mal drin,
I
ey.
think for the priest to deal with. They're not running the Shadow and Death to be able to deal with 5-5 early on. Dustbreaker, obviously terrible against eggs because you just pop them for your opponent.
There's the first Psychic Scream drawn by Sequinox. Now, I was literally just about to ask you, how high in priority do you think Psychic Scream is off of the Shadow Visions? Because we're talking about how important that card is, how it's the way that they clear the board over and over. Do you think they're going to be disappointed that they've drawn the first Psychic Scream because it lowers the chances to get one from the Shadow Visions?
Yes, like I agree, usually Psychic Scream is the card you're picking, but it depends very much, I find, on the context of the game, because Psychic Scream is a symmetrical board flip. If you're ahead on board, you really don't want to be Psychic Scream where your Twilight Drakes and your Northshire Clerics off the board. You want to be going then for Mind Blast, Power Word Shield, closing out the game through your board domination and then following up with damage through the face as well. But I think as it currently stands with no
Sieht ja gleich ein bisschen aufgeräumter aus, Nike hier, wa?
For the most part here, Singapore will be
Kreuz, ey, spiel ich jetzt
There
wieder
does
nicht.
come a point, though, where they do need
Dann
to
lass es doch kurz
win
mal.
the game. So they are going to want some Mind Blasts as well.
Muss ja nicht sein, dass du dich
Matriarch is
übereinstimmst.
interesting because the Hunter's main removal comes in the form of Hunter's Mark. There's a Skulking Ghost in Sequinox's hand. So there's actually a very real chance that one turn, Night Scale Matriarch comes down and just can't be dealt with.
Well, this has been one of Priest's or Dragon Priest's biggest win conditions for quite a long time. If you remember back to the kind of the control priests back before the rotation. When you play Skulking Guys, your minions just don't die to Shield Slam or Naturalize or Hunter's Mark. You can just clear off cheap removal spells for one mana that are in a bunch of different classes. And then, like you said, Primordial Drake, Nightscale Matriarch, even the Twilight Drake just stick on the board and they start chipping away for a very respectable amount of damage. For the second off, the desire to clear off this Howlmaster Shore is pretty apparent right now. This single card has just led Hunter to be able to do such disgustingly powerful things in the early turns of pretty much any matchup. It's somewhat less important against Priest when they are not usually developing quite so many minions for you to rush your Priests and mechs into as the Hunter. But it's still annoying for Singapore. I think it pretty much locks him into the game plan of having to go for a Psychic Scream. He's not winning the board before turn second.
The Spider Bombs are just sitting there kind of uselessly in this matchup. Well, I mean, not necessarily in this matchup, but against Northshire Cleric, they're not doing anything. If there were Twilight Drakes on the board and all that fun stuff, then the Spider Bombs would be having a great time, but Silent Storm's going to have to tempo it out. And it works out quite nicely with the rush. It deals with the Cleric. It prevents Singapore's card draw a little bit. It's not really what the card's for, though.
Yeah, Singapore is, I would imagine, not that sad about this. They're still on 30 health. While Death Rattle Hunter is undeniably not an aggro game, you still want to be playing fairly aggressively here. You want to go Devil Saw Egg into Play Dead plus Terror Scale Stalker and start closing out the game as quick as possible, lest you just get Chain Psychic Screamed, as we are probably going to be seeing here from Seconds.
So, jetzt werde ich die Couch noch hier hin zum Fernsehen schieben. Da kommt man überhaupt gar nicht ran, wenn man da ran will, wisst ihr? Weil Papa immer nur vorne was macht und Platz schaffen will.
Well, I completely agree. Psychic Scream, chaining them 2, maybe 3 turns in a row, or spacing them out in the later turns of the game, is exactly what you want to do to dominate.
Müde ich nicht.
Nur ein Stückel mausig.
Obviously, one of the key ways that Bulgaria win this game, win any game with Death Rider Hunter, is Deathstalker Rexar, which is going to have the potential to come down very soon. And that's a pretty good way of playing around Psychic Screen. Just keep generating more and more of these big threats. Eventually the priest runs out of Psychic Screens, you just slam on the board and win.
Wird dir alles verbaut, ey. Rezept, dass man die Couchmorde irgendwann rausschmeißt. Dann muss der Papa nämlich am Schranken seine Lumpe.
To get through to their win condition, but haven't even talked about the fact that when they get through to the late game, they play Shadow Reaper Anduin, Alex Straza, and try to kill their opponent with Mind Blast and that repetitive hero power that comes with the Death Knight for 2 damage to face each time. But Deathstalker Rexar really puts the spanner in the works for that game plan for Sequinox. You are getting Lifesteal minions, you are getting Life Drinker to get yourself more health. Even just the 5 armor that comes off of playing Deathstalker Rexar can really mess up the lethal plans for Sequinox if he was going to be going for that.
It's a hard turn though, because now for Singapore,
Also wenn ihr Licht ausmachen wollt, dann müsst ihr mal das Licht ausmachen.
but getting rid of the shore would mean playing the Dustbreaker, which would mean blocking the egg. So Bulgaria did set that up quite nicely, make it pretty messy.
Wird sich auch jetzt erstmal nicht ändern, muss
Though
ich.
Skulking Geist does do a lot of work against Death Rider Hunter. I already pointed out the Hunter's Mark, but losing to Play Dead 2 before Silent Storm has had the chance to play either of them. It's a pretty good result.
Yeah, because Sequinox isn't so much afraid of Q as he is afraid of Carnivorous Q into Play Dead or into Terrascale Stalker, because if you're being hit for 16 damage with a King Crush after it's been cubed and Play Dead, that's when it gets scary. Whereas if they just cube a big minion, you can then go Psychic Scream, Master Spell, get rid of it, get rid of that Death Rattle, and you're still very happy as a team at Singapore.
I'm not sure that we've mentioned yet, one of the additions to Bulgaria's Death Rider Hunter is Swamp King Dread, which has been creeping its way into this archetype more and more over the last couple months. It just fits the curve very nicely. It's a 7 mana 9/9.
Puff,
You
puff.
play the High Main, you play the Dread, you play the Katarina.
Yeah, this play from Bulgaria is an interesting one, because obviously it leads to a pretty scary amount of damage on board, which is good. That's what you want to do in this matchup, is get a good amount of pressure. It also means going into turn 7, you make a board which has no Death Rattles, which you're quite happy with it being Psychic Screamed away then, because it gets rid of that card and leaves you the ability to maybe stick a Katharina on the board. But that play played a lot into the Dustbreaker that we see here from Sequinox, and given they were playing around it so heavily on the previous turn, and now play so directly into the Dustbreaker, we start to raise a couple of alarm bells.
Well, there you go. Let's get going with Deathstalker Rexar. Bulgaria can curve into Katharina and not worry about running out of resources from this point onwards. For Singapore, though, Alex Straza, they're ready to start dealing some serious damage.
They are, but they need to be really careful about how they sequence this out from their opponents. And I think this is actually a pretty clever line of play they're taking here by not just slamming down the Primordial Trait, because the biggest thing they're afraid of going into turn 8 is obviously Katharina.
Yeah.
It's one of the most devastatingly powerful cards ever printed in Hearthstone, when you're pulling out the likes of King Crush and Savannah Highlands. So they really want to Psychic Scream it on the next turn. That's, if Katharina is played, that's very likely what they play on the following turn. So they don't want to play their best minion going into that Psychic Scream turn. This makes a lot of sense to me to not go for the Drake and instead play some slightly weaker minions to set up for a Scream.
So this is interesting for Singapore then. What do they do here? Do they deal damage to the face, get rid of the armor, then Scream? Do they deal with the Katharina, then Scream? It's complicated. The more I look at it, the more I think I like getting rid of the armor and then shuffling in these weak cards into the Death Rider Hunter deck, the Ooze and the Pyromancer.
I like the look of that. In Bulgaria's deck, they are not... Oh, sorry, they're playing one Stitch Tracker, which means they have the top deck of either Katharina or the Stitch Tracker
to get the
Katharina, exactly. It's close. It is close. And they may not even Psychic Scream on this turn. I suppose they could go for an aggressive push with Alex Straza, but Swamp King Dread just munches that up very happily. Yeah, I think they're realizing Psychic Scream has to be the play on this turn.
They do, however, come to the conclusion
But they want that Katharina out of the way. They do not want to be facing that anytime soon.
So Druid and Witch with Grizzly, you're back into the deck. There's also a Savannah Hymane in there, beast-wise, but it just doesn't matter too much now because the Katharina is gone. King Crush can just be slammed down this turn, but does it actually do anything? I don't think so. Well, it deals 8 damage, but that's it. Then it dies.
It does something, yeah. And that's clearly what they're thinking here. They want to get the value rolling before they leave themselves dying to Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Should mention that Bulgaria haven't seen Twilight Acolyte or Cabal Shadow Priest yet. I believe there are 2 copies of each of those cards in the... Yeah, there are. There are 2 copies of each of those cards in Psychonauts' deck. So any single big minion that gets thrown down by Silent Storm could just get stolen.
Yeah. Very true. Which is a big reason, a big point of reasoning for Bulgaria's play here, because I'm still not convinced that it was right to not play King Crush. Because,
really?
Well, if your opponent had Anduin, they very possibly would have just played it last turn.
True. Right,
on when he played Katharina, because it's not that much better to shuffle in with Psychic Scream.
Right.
They clearly didn't want the Katharina shuffled back into the deck because they killed it off first. So you can probably rule out Anduin, maybe not necessarily.
I don't know, because Anduin would have left the Witch with Grizzly on the board, so it's not super clear cut.
I don't know. It's a very close one. And I can see the reasoning. If you want to save King Crush for when you already have a board, to make it multiple threats. They can't just Anduin because you already have a very scary board of minions.
And also, again, with Bulgaria playing 2 threats, going a little wide, it does play around that Cabal Shadow Priest combo that I was referring to a few moments ago. If they can hold back King Crush and just play it for lethal later, obviously that's the ideal scenario.
Yeah.
Cube is, again, it hasn't been drawn this game, but seems almost unplayable, because a Cube being stolen by the Priest would be a disaster.
But this is a facet of Hearthstone that we just come back to time and time again, of when do you play around stuff? When do you have the liberty to play around stuff? I agree, there were massive punishes for playing King Crush. Are they in such a good spot that they can afford to play around it? I think probably yes.
Yeah,
I think they're in a decent spot right now, so they can afford to make those slightly safer plays. They don't need to take big risks.
Die Lunte brennt aber ganz schön oft.
Singapore's hand is complete rubbish. That's the way it looks at the moment. They're not playing anything.
That was a snap pick Psychic Scream from the Shadow Visions there, though Mind Blast was an option. So clearly, Psychonauts isn't even considering the win the game part of this game just yet. They just want to survive for as long as they can. And healing that turn and passing was fine, you know? There's not that much damage on the board. They're not under any real pressure just yet.
Yeah, the Mind Blast was kind of a consideration because you have Alex Straza, you have 2 Mind Blasts, maybe a 3rd to be picked up with the last remaining 1 in the deck.
Yep.
If you find Anduin, that's a lot of pressure you're putting forward.
Big if though.
Exactly. What is more likely to happen? Are you more likely to draw Anduin, or are they more likely to develop a big amount of pressure? They develop pressure every time. There is no 6-card Hunter hand plus the hero power that does nothing onto the board. And this vicious scout for Silent Storm, I'm struggling to think of a reason why you would not take that in this matchup. It's just an incredibly powerful option to be taken. But in the end, he goes for making the same zombies as last time. It worked well for him before, I suppose. So just making more poisonouses to throw down onto the board. But I kind of wonder if when you have so much stuff in your hand anyway, you have plays to make, you have threats to throw down onto the board. I think getting the backup plan for later on, if you are hit with an Alex Straza or an Anduin, instead just developing a life seal in your hand to heal back up afterwards might have been a slightly less risky option.
So many Psychic Screams for Psychonauts now. Still 2 more available. He's not going to be dying anytime soon to Bulgaria. And I guess that's sort of the point. Now they've got time to dig deeper into that deck to find Shadow Reaper Anduin and then to combo it with the Alex Straza and get some sort of 2 or 3 turn setup.
The Bulgaria now very clearly on the hero power train, wanting to get the value as much as possible, which is not always correct in this matchup. It's not against the likes of Odd Warrior, a very different control deck where their win condition is pretty much always just pity, or maybe some kind of a swing onto the board. Very little burst through to at all. Against this deck, you generally want to play a bit quicker.
Könnte ich auch meine anderen Münzen eigentlich auch da reinpacken. Kommt elegant rüber dann.
I think they finally chose there with the vicious scale hide. Is working out okay. I do still also want to point out, I would have preferred to have seen the vicious scale hide on the previous turn as well. It's just the best zombies in so many situations.
That is true.
Oh baby.
One of the cards that sort of
Schnapp.
almost single-handedly buffed Rexar to the strength that it is now.
And again, a difficult turn here for Silent Storm where... Yeah, I'm not sure if I agree with this because, I suppose maybe I'm being a little bit too cautious. I'm thinking, I'm falling into the trap myself of what do you play around, because obviously if Singapore have Alex Straza into Anduin and you're taking a bunch of damage, you'd love a couple of extra lifesteal minions knocking about in the hand. Usually that's not the case though. Usually they're just going to be clearing off the board, healing up, playing Shadow Wizards, things like that.
It did mess Equinox up though, because this Primordial Drake didn't actually clear up anything. It's protecting him, sure, but these minions are still on the board, and while Silent Storm does have this lifesteal minion, that Alex Straza isn't quite as threatening as it would be otherwise. These aren't the best builder beasts I've ever seen throughout this game so far, I've got to say.
I think they've been respectable. I mean,
actually, that is
I
take it back entirely.
That's a nice one, especially because he got the option of stealth, which I imagine he would have taken off the giant wasp to go in combination with Tundra Rhino, which is a very classically powerful combo in Death Rattle Hunter, just meaning every single beast that you generate can just go directly to the face, as any good Hunter player should.
It's gotta be tempting to just throw down that Zombies and just leave it stealthed. This is just such a huge setup. Now they actually hit with it though. I guess it's weak to Psychic Scream regardless of what happens, so keeping it stealth doesn't have the such a big advantage as it would in other matchups.
Yeah, I suppose this does demand an answer, doesn't it? Because I was going to make the point of, if you're going for this play, why don't you go Spider Bomb Terror Scale Stalker?
Yeah.
Because that then clears off the minion, you're pushing the same amount of damage to face. But that Tundra Rhino, man does that demand an answer.
Yeah.
And it means that the Psychic Stream has to be used on what was probably not the most powerful board that Bulgaria will be making for the rest of the game.
Oh my goodness, he drew it immediately! That's getting slammed down this turn as soon as this beast's been built. Not immediately, but Jederzeit Hydra is great when combined with lifesteal, otherwise not so much.
Well, I mean, you just play it, like it's just a big minion. You can go for Night Prowler on this turn because there's nothing else in play. And it gives you a pretty even amount of stats. It just comes down to the decision, which I'm sure they will be having. Do we ever play the minion we generate?
The zombies.
The Tundra Rhino. Get down a stealth Rhino as quick as you can.
Again, the Rhino, if just played on the board, followed up by Cube Terror Scale Stalker, that can just be game winning. Although Bulgaria, they're just going to keep smacking it into the face. They just don't care. While it's doing 4 damage, it's doing its job against the first. It's a little bit short-sighted, but you can see the logic.
Well, what are the punishes? If you leave it stealth, it can get mass dispelled, which isn't that bad because you still have 4/7.
No.
It's really just that you might get hit with the old Twilight
Cabal
into Cabal.
It is a big risk, given that, again, they've not seen either of these cards played yet. But I guess they've decided it's how they win the game.
It's, oh man, it is a big risk though, because if you are hit with Twilight Acolyte into Cabal Shadow Priest, that's so bad for you.
Right.
It's really, really bad. You then would have to go Spider Bomb double Terror Scale, I guess, to try and mop up the board and push a little bit of extra damage. But you get 4 damage through to face, you start closing out the game. I've been talking about how you need to play aggressive. And they've clearly been shown so far that that combo is not there, or the minion would already have been stolen.
The second one was going to have to do Psychic Scream this.
Okay, he was obviously considering it.
I mean, you have to consider it. All beasts having charge, given that there's potentially several zombies here that have been drawn off of the Psychic Scream. That's scary.
Instead, just developing as much as he can onto the board. And now comes the big punch because King Crush has charge. Can you imagine?
Yeah, actually. Oh, I can imagine that.
Irgendwann später.
Yeah, no cube into terror scale nonsense, which was the
Dann konnten wir ihn ganz schön lange.
that Secronox would have been hit with.
Where are these cubes today?
Yeah.
What's going on?
They are right down in the bottom of the deck, it seems.
Just going for the as aggressive zombies as possible, I guess.
Yeah, I think that was Life Drinker plus Swamp Leech, which means because it has Life Steal, you gain back 6 when you play it, and it has Life Steal as well. So this is I think a good switch from Bulgaria. I think what I might have liked to see was them to make this turn a little bit sooner, where they start keeping back the Life Steal minions going healing minions. But now they've realised they're in such a dominant spot on the board. I love the fact that they are taking those healing minions because they realise that is what they get.
Look at that! The Wind Fury, Divine Shield, Poisonous, and charged off of the Tundra Rhino to just clear the board. Tundra Rhino remains untouched, and now Singapore getting the wrong piece of the
Bin
combo.
voll reich, eine Goldmünze.
Have to do something about this minion.
They're just in the exact same position. Once again,
Yeah.
do we Psychic Scream this? We're down at 4 less health than we were last time.
How do they win if they do Psychic Scream? Because Silent Storm now has so many powerful minions in the deck, in the hand, in the hero power. Like, with no Psychic Scream left as insurance, Bulgaria can just play everything and not worry. They can just go as wide as possible. But no choice.
And this really could not have gone much worse for Singapore. And this does kind of make you imagine, what were they expecting to happen where their opponent, they developed with the Twilight Drakes last turn. How does their opponent not clear off their board? What hand could they have where their Drakes don't die?
Right.
I think there's a pretty good chance with Spider Bomb still in the deck, Death Rattle activators in the form of Terror Scale, King Crush, whatever that can be built off the zombies. There was a pretty good chance, I think, that all the Drakes get cleared off, and you're in the exact same spot where you have to just Psychic Scream it away.
Bulgaria just spoiled for choice here as to which way they want to go about this. Which of these absurdly powerful minions do we want to play first? To be fair, there's not that many.
It's not insane. Like, they can go Egg, Terror Scale, Flanking Strike, or Egg, double Terror Scale. I think they'd probably rather Flanking Strike their own Egg if they're going to do any of that. They might just go for the hero power, I suppose, actually, because I think that's a decent enough board already. Okay, or the Glove Scale, whatever. I like saving back the second Terror Scale is the main point I'm trying to make with this play.
This is setting up the 2-turn lethal. Well, no, because just the hero power actually brings Singapore out of range again.
Ne?
I mean, putting 2 more damage on the board by activating that egg a second time with the second Terror Scale would have set up lethal for King Crush.
So, Priester ist voll im Arsch, so die.
I mean, yeah, they've seen all the Psychic Screams now, haven't they? So I think going for a Flanking Strike on your own Egg really wasn't ridiculous.
That or the second Terror Scale, either of which would have set up lethal next turn.
You just want to, yeah, that's the point. You want to be setting up lethal every time next turn. Because now that you've seen no less than 4 Psychic Screams being played by your opponent, you can be pretty sure that the amount of removal left is fairly low.
Better late than never, I suppose, is the best thing to say about this combo now. It's taken a 5-5, which is pretty underwhelming. 14 damage available to Silent Storm right now with the King Crush.
Which it has to be considering. How does it play into Andrew? And I think it's because all the screams are gone, they're thinking, what AoE can they play that punishes us here? So what happens if they play Andrew? If they go King Crush, push everything face, Andrew is pretty bad for them. They will be pretty far behind on board at that point. and they will opponent will have gained armor. Divine hymns can only be so far away. So I think after the conclusion of we probably don't set up lethal a lot of the time, I really don't mind the fact that they're just going with the wildebeest here, because it just gives them immediate pressure, but also extends their ability to go into the late game so much more effectively.
Good old stealth hungry crab.
I wish we could have a stealth hungry crab to deal with those murlocs walking around the Blizzcon here,
Yeah, right.
interrupting our broadcast.
Das sieht total scheiße aus.
What? Psychonox.
So Singapore could very well just make the huge gambit here of going Alexstrasza to their opponent's face, hit them with the Twilight Acolyte, which would bring them down to, what, 14? And then pray there's no heal and they top deck the other Mind Blast. That's an out. That's a way they could win this game.
Incredibly, Silent Storm once again hasn't set up the 2-turn lethal. King Crush is 1 damage off at the moment, and that's if Singapore don't heal.
Oh, what, are you assuming if that's the trade coming in with the Acolyte? Because they have 11 damage on it.
Right. Yeah, well, it's awkward because now, like, if the trade does happen, then it's not lethal. If the trade doesn't happen and they heal, it's still not lethal. So it does seem like 1 extra damage could have made all the difference here. Wow, they're going to try and get some of that board control back.
Yeah, I think this is more likely to work out for them because they can go trade Divine Hymn, heal back up.
Yeah.
They are much more likely to win the game, I think, through board control than they are to go with the Hail Mary I was thinking of, where you just top deck exactly the second Mind Blast and they can't kill you and they have no heal.
Right.
It's a lot of things that have to go your way to win the game in that fashion. And it's not even looking that bad because Silent Storm has been playing it slowly, conservatively, this matchup right from the get-go, by holding back on flanking strike on his own egg, holding back on the King Crush right from the start. It has got himself into a situation where he's just not winning the board quickly enough, and that Spider Bomb is a big nuisance.
It just feels to me as though ever since that last Psychic Scream was played, Bulgaria should have just been saying, yep, let's just put as much as we can on the board, put as much power as we possibly can all over this board, and put Singapore on the clock. And they're still looking fine. Actually, they're still looking very good, actually, when you take Psychonox's hand into consideration.
It's turning around pretty well for them. They now have, 11, 14 damage on the board, which means 14 plus the 8 from King Crush would bring them up to 22. So no lethal representative for Psychonox, which they will be calculating. They'll know they're pretty safe in terms of dying on the next turn. So again, Alex Charles in the face is something to think about here if you think that's your only shot, because all Psychic Screams are gone. Anduin at this point is starting to become too late. I think they're going to have to start making those risky plays if they want to pull this game out. It won't work, as we can see with the Life Drinker Zombeast and Ziliax. That would heal them for 9, I think, in 1 turn, which would pretty much lock Psychonox out of the game.
Psychonox, I mean, Team Singapore have had a couple games now with some quite awkward draws. They managed to win the last game, sure, but they failed to draw Carnivorous Cube in any proper fashion. Yeah. And now it's Shadow Reaper Anduin, just right at the bottom of the deck. And as with all of the decks that are focused around hero cards, when that happens, you're in a pretty rough state.
They're going with the Alexstrasza, and he is going face with the Cabal Shadow Priest. I think this is a really good recognition of how bad their situation is here. Psychonox realizes we're not winning this game in the usual timeline. We need to shake things up here and make some magic happen, which is exactly what they are trying to do here. But with the zombies healing them back up for, I believe, 6 in 1 fell swoop because of the lifesteal aspect of the damage they're dealing. And the Ziliax is just way out of range. They need Anduin right now to have any chance. And to be honest, I'm wondering if even that would.
Even Anduin leaves the 3-3 and the 2-2.
Das sieht ziemlich scheiße aus.
It would prevent lethal. There you go, the second Twilight Acolyte just being drawn a few turns too late.
And this is the problem of all these control decks that rely so heavily around their Death Knights. Right. Yes, when you draw them, they are devastatingly powerful. We've learned that to be true in Hearthstone. But Control Mage, Control Warlock, Control Priest, all these decks, when you don't find the Death Knight, you're just going to lose. As we can see here, plenty enough damage. Or actually, is that exactly enough damage? A little over damage to close things out with King Crush here, which means Bulgaria will be equalising the playing field here at 1 game apiece.
Even though they are 1 man down, it doesn't mean they are going to take this one lightly. Tying up the series. Again, the elimination series. Loser of this match will be going home.
Gewinnt.
Well, not going home, but losing the HGG finals.
And I think that was very nice.
Chance to download it. Yeah, next up in this match.
To be honest, like Mod Paladin.
Guide gegen Schamane.
I find a way, Derek.
Okay. Well,
I find a way.
Most people, most sentient human beings will struggle to be losing those matches.
Anyone playing here, for example.
Fair enough. The way the decks line up against each other, one deck just comes out on top the vast majority of the time. This matchup is very difficult. Right. There's a lot you have to be playing right. It's not just the fact that one deck innately beats the other. You have to be playing cleverly. You have to know what you're looking to do. When do you swap? What cards are you trying to steal? What do you naturalize? When do you naturalize?
Es hat doch irgendwie jeder fast Killisset, wa? Jeder hat irgendwie immer die gleichen Sachen.
It's hard.
Gibt's
But
ja
it
nicht.
feels so rewarding when you get there, when you get that combo. There's something about playing this deck.
Absolutely. If you haven't done so yet, find any opportunity you can to listen to on stream, like the gods of Torwaggle Druid. At the moment, the main ones I like listening to are Personal and Elfandor,
Yes.
both of whom play an unhealthy amount of Torwaggle Druid, I think it's fair to say. And the way they talk about it, it just seems like they're talking another language at first. But it all starts to come together. Towards the end of the game, you realise everything they've said was true all along. And best Udo you can deal with in Bulgaria. But Udo also has the same understanding.
Now, Best you were taking a little nap when I spoke to Bulgaria earlier. And you know, quite rightly so. These teams have travelled a long way to come to Blizzcon, you know, from Asia and Europe, respectively. And he's enjoying the little nap, but his team was saying about him that he is, out of all of them, the person that's the most nervous. He's the youngest of the team. Both him and one of the other players was 19, but he is the younger of the two 19-year-olds. And he's
19 Uhr, leckt mich.
to make him feel
Warum ist das so
better.
spät?
Well, it's if you think he's young now, I specifically remember casting Best Udo EU in one of the first tournaments I ever casted. Like really small open cup where he got really far into it. I didn't necessarily want it, so he got a deep run into an open cup. And he must have been like 16, 17 then at the time, so he's been putting away, you know, grinding away in Hearthstone for a good long while.
23 Kontinente später.
Nur ungefähr. Schon verdammt viele. Das ist eine verdammt große Welt. Größer als die Erde, musst du dir mal von der Masse ausrechnen. So, 7-mal größer als die Erde.
Reasonable start for both sides there. Bulgaria with the
Das kommt mir irgendwie bekannt vor von einem Video, was ich mal gesehen hatte.
Ist halt das größere Welt. Ist halt eine größere Welt. Alle, ich weiß nicht, warum immer alle auch von der Größe der Erde ausgehen, wenn sie Welten anschauen. Das ist so. Warum?
Ja, die Erde mag zwar schon irgendwie groß sein, aber sie ist dann noch klein noch. Immer noch.
Vielleicht auch der Grund, was eben Größenverhältnis schwarze Auge, was eben Entfernung und Dichte angeht, einfach ziemlich nicht so ganz zusammenstellen, man muss dem sagen, ja, ist halt schon etwas älter, man hat vielleicht eben gedacht, oh ja, das ist vielleicht voll scheiße groß und am Ende merkt man, oh ja, doch nicht.
Es ist halt es sind alles nur grobe Überblicke, da gibt es keine absolut großen Details immer.
Ja, wobei, es wurde ja nie gesagt, wie groß eine Ankara ist, ne? Muss nicht zwingend eine unserer Größenverhältnisse sein.
Eventuell.
Könnten 10.000 ein Kilometer sein.
as the druid, you will just be losing to the druid card.
Das ist halt der Punkt, den ich dann halt so, ne?
Because they will just dominate on the board.
Ja.
Yes, they will have
Das ist genauso wie die Welt, die ich ja schaffe, hat nicht 12 Monate, ja. Ein paar mehr.
I guess it must to an extent come down
Genauso
to
sind die
playing
Tage
things out
länger.
with the Shadow Walk itself.
Yes, I imagine that would be a big part of it. But you don't want
Ja, es gibt schon Sachen, die sind schon sehr interessant.
Das heißt, ich muss die Monate auch
Und wonach könnte man die benennen wohl?
Aber weiß ich nicht, muss ich dann mir halt noch ausdenken. Muss ich erstmal muss ich den Umriss schaffen, denke ich auch. Weiter. Also noch ein bisschen mehr.
drawing off branching paths there. How often do you see players drawing with branching paths when they have UI in hand? You just don't do that usually. Like, I suppose I am
Ja,
more
ich habe ja
a
in
Malagos
Geschichte
Druid
gepinnt.
player, and to draw less generally with Malagos, you are less
Wie
willing
man
to
ja
draw
weiß,
cards.
penne ich ja sehr gerne in
You don't have
Geschichte.
ultimate win condition in fatigue like Togwaggle Druid does.
Was das jetzt
But
nicht?
still, the way it's looking, if he wants to play UI on 10 mana, he's
Keine
going to
Ahnung.
be
Ich
overdrawing
wollte es mal erwähnt haben.
very, very likely. And I think I probably would have liked to have seen at least one arm
Durch?
off of that, because what are you looking for in the meanwhile is
Sind
exactly nourish or wild growth, but
17 Monate.
that really make your mid-game better.
Jeder Monat so um die 33 Tage und ein Tag geht 33 Stunden.
Zero mana Electro, not exactly premium, full crumpled. Out of all of the cards that he could have gotten discounted.
Wie kommst du zu diesen Zahlen?
Like, what spell does he even want to play
Ich habe
twice
so
at any point?
ziemlich gerechnet und weil ich wollte schon irgendwo eine gewisse Akkurarität
That's
hineinbringen,
true.
was die Zahlen angeht, weil sonst verrechnet man sich vielleicht später, wenn man
Ja, ohne den Zahlchaos, den wir haben, wa? Manchmal.
Es gibt kein Schaltjahr in diesem. Bei uns ist ja dieses Schaltjahr, weißt du, das ist der Rest der Zeit ja halt, ne? Gibt es da nicht zum Beispiel.
It's not going to be your win condition
Sowas
usually,
nicht.
if you're going for the full Shuttlewalk combo. But again, if
Ich muss mal sagen, ich sag mal, wie das Schaltjahr ist so.
the Grumble stolen off the Togwaggle effect, maybe that just
Nah.
gives you a little bit of extra value that you need to win in the late game.
Klick, 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 klick. Wo ist der Schalter? Das ist der Lichtschalter.
Yeah, he's playing in time. I was very confused by the ordering there of the play.
Ja, wenn es der Schalter ist, wo sind die Schalter?
Guess they're coming to the conclusion that if they were to have a minion
Mann, die
stall,
scheiß
they would
Nase.
be too far behind, which I think is a good assumption. With the plague gone
Ich
down,
hasse
that would
es.
have been a little bit too scary to have been MCC.
Seem happy though. Frankie has just the heels on
Ja,
the
irgendwie
stage.
jetzt zusammen.
Giving your teammates a big grin on that last turn. That's a good point.
Kleb.
Hast du meinen Kleber?
Singapore looking very focused.
Hast du meinen Teaser besser gesagt?
It's great to actually
Tja,
have
ich selber
the
habe
team
so gut wie
team
gar
in
nichts.
person now, because we've been saying throughout last week, we love it when they're playing together, interacting with each other in the same room. But having them here standing next to each other on the beautiful stage behind us is something else
Also das
entirely.
letzte Mal, dass ich so eine Sachen gebraucht habe, das war in der Schule. Und das ist mittlerweile... Das ist mittlerweile...
You know, Ackermann was telling us his biggest strength is their
10 oder 9 Jahre her.
They had a psychologist specifically to work with the team and to improve that.
And led them to do what was the thing they did from the anime thing?
To give you force crows,
Exactly.
the thing they did from the anime thing.
I don't know that.
Not even when you were younger.
No.
Never watched Dragon Ball Z.
I wasn't allowed much TV when I was a kid.
Ah.
How quickly that changed. That's incredible.
Druide kriegt auf die Fresse wie Sau, ey.
As now for Bulgaria, they are in that spot. I was hypothesizing they would arrive when you double draw off of branching cards. How are you ever going to be playing the ultimate infestation on the following turn?
They've got a good hand though. If they just play Dream Petal this turn, they can't now obviously, but it guarantees the discount on one of the vital cards.
Yes, it does.
That must have been worth considering. I guess they feel as though there's too much pressure on the board and that they needed to find a way of dealing with some of this, and the Spellstone pickup is going to deal with one of these 4/4s nicely.
Like, yeah, in my opinion, I think it's a good realization that they're not going for the combo yet.
Yeah.
That's probably not happening soon. They need to be drawing with UI first so that they give their opponent less value when they swap.
Badum, bum, 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 bum.
The hero power here does give them more flexibility on their following turn because it doesn't lock them into UI. But going with the Spellstone would have allowed them to just play UI.
Why prevent the UI?
It doesn't prevent it because we have three key cards in Dream Petal's Dream Petal, Azalina, and King Togwaggle in order to activate that deck swap and the copying of King's Ransom to make sure they always end up with the bigger deck at the end in Fatigue.
It's a strange position you can end up with actually with Ultimate Infestation in this deck because, as you said, once the important pieces have been drawn, I've literally seen Ultimate Infestation played before just to burn 4 cards. Just, I'm just emptying my deck. Let's go.
It's just like all laws of physics and Hearthstone are just thrown out the window when Togwaggle enters the fray. Like
And also Shadow Wall.
Also Shadow Wall. Like I was playing a game against Shadow Wall earlier where I just went for against Togwaggle where I was going for a Doom Pack to destroy as many minions as possible. I wanted to just destroy my own deck. By doing so, I knew he would get a worse deck in the end. It's very, very weird how it all works out. As you're wondering, is this a Hagatha game? Clearly Singapore. I think it is. Yep, they want to get that value rolling. No card draw in hand, no Grundle, no Life Drink, and no Shutterwalk. I suppose they've actually already played a Life Drink, so just the Shutterwalk and the
Ach du
Grumble.
Scheiße.
Das ist gerade mal so eine Runde selten, habe ich noch nicht gemacht.
Getting the card draw rolling, which Hagatha will
Viel
maybe
zu
afford
erkunden, viele
through
Abenteuer.
an elementary reaction or a fast sight.
Warum gibt es überhaupt keine richtig großen Blätter mal?
Ja, dann müsste ich meine. Aber es ist ja sowieso erst eine grobe Richtlinie für mich, um diese Karte nochmal dann neu zu zeigen.
Eigentlich, was du bräuchtest eigentlich so eine richtig große Leinwand eigentlich und darauf malst du denn die Karte, ey.
Jetzt noch halt hier dieses.
I'm sorry, Dream Petal. And it looks like it's best Uda. He's going back to it as well, but I agree with your logic. Like, playing that Ultimate Infestation, it does mean the game is going to end faster. So...
Like, what I'm saying now is I still think UI probably should be played here to dominate the board and make sure you don't fall behind.
Yeah.
I think what I would have liked even more was to see Armor Game off of the branching cards. I think that was the way to go to make sure you can very freely play the UI.
Right.
The obvious downside is you draw more cards, which means you draw minions, which means the Dream Petal is less likely to go on the Togwaggle or the Azalina. But Togwaggle is built in a way that every other minion you can just play. You don't want to get a specific use out of it necessarily. Bulgaria, they're playing the 2 mind control techs, the Tyrants. Pretty much every other minion could have just been thrown out of the hand on that or the next turn. There's no minions in the deck. It's almost all spells.
Das ist ja noch nicht alles, da gibt es ja noch die andere Ebene. Die eine oder andere. Und davon gibt es keine Karten.
Was für Ebenen?
Soll ich dir schon alles verraten? Das ist ja noch gut.
Gibt's eine Hölle oder was?
Naja, ich weiß nicht mehr, aber reicht ja irgendwo, wie auch immer. Eben wieder, was weiß ich.
Also so typische...
Davon existiert keine Karte. Jede Karte, die jemals angefertigt wurde, geht seltsamerweise, verbrennt sie, löst sich in Luft auf, keine Ahnung.
Ja, was sonst?
Ja, Dämonen sind sehr verschieden, ey.
Wundert mich nicht. Da hast bestimmt alles voller Rosa.
Das wäre ja so voll die rosa Stadt. Da ist der Kies. Der erste Dämon, den du triffst, so, wa?
Ja.
Erst einmal alle rennen schnell weg.
Yay! So kommt's dann nämlich.
Selbst wenn und.
Gottes Willen, ne.
Was hast du schon dagegen?
Has to focus on cloning Best Uda's minions, but Best Uda doesn't care about that. He doesn't need these minions to win the game.
So now that Best Uda has got the step 1 of the plan fully in check, he's got that done. He's reduced the cost of either Azalina or Togwaggle. He's drawn a few cards so far. He needs to decide how he progresses through this game, which is not easy in Togwaggle. There are many different ways you can approach the same few core cards to try and win a fatigue battle. I think the standard one, if you would always draw as much as possible, try and get the deck swap and steal an important win from his opponent with the deck swap. But maybe you were talking about double the price Togwaggle and just try and go for a deck swap without the Azalina to pull things back.
leaving only 6 cards, so it would
Ich hasse eigentlich dieses Standbein hier, aber naja.
if Bulgaria wanted to do it that way.
Weil in erster Linie schwer.
Maybe they just go Ferocious Howl or the branching path to draw 2, Ferocious Howl, and just dig through that deck.
Yeah.
The sooner they run out of the cards, the sooner they win the game.
Now that you're not trying to why to draw,
Mein Gott.
very happy with branching paths. To go card draw here, you just want to
Kann man trainieren.
power through that deck as quick as possible, and then very possibly in the next turn or two, go for a top waggle swap. I mean, he's clearly
Das umfassende Handbuch. Meinst wohl ja das Schwere, ey.
There it is.
just
Okay.
going for it.
Naturalize.
Typisch
Probably
frisch.
Naturalize both of the minions, and then maybe Azalina to get their very own copy of the King's Ransom. And also their own copy of the cards that have now just been drawn by Singapore. So Bulgaria are going to end up with
Zwischen die Brüste noch andere Seite fehlt auch noch
Ja,
Hilfe.
die wieder. Ey, ganz ehrlich, hier sind zu viele. Warum hat der hier so viele Sachen, die hier eigentlich mal weggemacht werden könnten? Ja, oder zumindest. Ah, Gott.
in theory, Uzi now has perfect knowledge because he's seen the hand, he's seen the deck, he knows that Shadow Up hasn't been drawn yet.
Einfach nur mal.
And I wouldn't even be surprised if we see a concede from Singapore soon. I don't know how they win now.
Really? I mean, they have, not right now because they're overloaded, the King's Ransom Nourish, which could potentially
Sure.
Shudderwalk and Grumble in the same.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
This
Oh,
isn't
müsste es ein bisschen besser gehen.
but I agree, it's not like
Seem to empty their hand. Look at that healing room too.
and, you know, Udir also has to be
Ich glaube, das Match geht noch ein bisschen lange.
Spellstone in Crumble Town.
Wahrscheinlich.
Just overdrawn there.
That's not a problem anymore.
Yeah, we can see Freaky laughing about that. That is
Ende
perfectly
2.7.
fine for him. He really does not care that he
Wenn du mir jetzt noch sagst, es gibt zu jedem verdammten Update ein Buch, ey, dann raste ich aus.
would he do literally nothing, I think, for him. It would just be a 9-man
They would swap decks.
Ja, weil ich nur lese, Blender 2.7, da denke ich so, gibt es zu jedem verdammten Aktualisierung ein Buch oder was? Würde mich nicht wundern.
Yeah, as long as his opponent can't have it, Udi is very, very happy indeed. So now the
Ja, aber das,
Schon geschrieben, wie lange er dran gesessen hat. Er
surviving on board and making sure he's not outbalanced,
ja, aber das wäre wirklich
auf
wirklich.
Grundlagen ist es genau richtig.
No.
quote unquote.
Ein Schweinchen.
But then after he
Wurde ein
swapped
Schweinchen
King's
modelliert.
Ransom Nourish, Udi could then go Nourish King's Ransom, which means he draws 3 cards
Ja,
from the
sehr, sehr.
back deck of the Civil War. I guess he wouldn't go for that. But either
Dann
way,
später.
we can see Bulgaria here quite happily pulling pretty far ahead in the
Anfänge. Runde. Alter.
And there it is, the last card being drawn. Swap
Blender erweitern.
I would imagine for Udir and just trying
Ja,
to
man ist voll der Blender. Haha. Ich bin geblendert.
It's not over, but it's looking
Really difficult for Team Barrel to win, isn't it?
there's Hagatha and there's Grumble. And Hagatha and Grumble
Kapitel
are the
1,
best
Einleitung.
ways to make some really powerful effects happen.
Ganz ehrlich, jetzt fehlt hier nur noch ein Hörbuch davon. Würde ich dem noch zutrauen irgendwie.
Minions on board, you can just bounce
Wenn man irgendwelche Handbücher von irgendwelchen Programmen noch verhörbucht, ey.
Ich weiß, ich bin halt nicht so diese Videotutorials da lieber von Leuten, die A, mehr Ahnung haben und schon eher eingeweihter sind und dann sagen können, okay, das ist wichtig, das ist vielleicht eher nur für spezifische Dinge. Ein Buch sagt dir das nicht.
Ja, es ist zu allgemein. Andere.
Wenn es detailliert ist, es sagt dir trotzdem nicht das, was du. Deshalb mag ich Tutorials in die Buch und
Yeah, they don't forget to.
Neither has been played.
Azola's been played, I think.
Die Geschichte.
Not that I recall, at least. But yeah, whatever is going to happen, it's not
Blender Foundation Open Movies. Ja,
powerful effects are going to have to
ja, es ist schon erstaunlich, dass man damit Sachen machen kann.
get the job done.
So umfangreich.
Yeah, just trying to see what you can make happen here is crumpled.
You can discover what elemental could win him the game.
Well, no, that's a,
Oh, that's a draw to what? Ah, never mind.
It's just bad. Yeah, I think we see him reach the concede there at some point soon, at least.
No minions left, so no more spells to be generated by someone.
Also wirklich, bis man hier zum eigentlichen Dings mal kommt, dabei sind hier Seiten vergangen, ey. Ja, das ist ja schrecklich. Du kriegst ja am Anfang wirklich erst die ganzen Sachen so grob erklärt, was ist, anstatt mal die gewissen Arbeitsschritte irgendwie.
Die werden halt nicht so lange um den heißen Brei herumreden. Jemand wird den vielleicht noch den heißen Brei, was nicht so lange wie jetzt, wenn du das...
Vor lauter Begeisterung habe ich nicht mehr gesehen, wer jetzt... Ach so, Bulgarien hat gewonnen, alles klar. Kommt noch irgendwie was für, oder ist das... Oder ist das jetzt nur noch Palaver? Paladin gegen Krieger. Wir haben so ungefähr noch 9 Minuten und dann soll es hier noch ein Match geben? Scheinbar.
Eine Runde Komfort. So, und jetzt habe ich keinen Platz mehr.
Tja, ich kann meinen Lappy nicht wegschieben oder so. Höchstens... Naja, wenn ich höchstens vielleicht... Weiß ja nicht, ich müsste höchstens meine Ecke bereinigen, damit du noch dich ausbreiten kannst. Oh, ey, dieses Buch! An! Oh.
Okay, actually, this seems pretty tough in general because they could just slam the blessing of fight and start dealing with it as quickly as possible. They could go purify his maul. That way, this board just can't be dealt with. So.
It is really tough because the way I'm mapping it out is I was thinking first glance, blessing of my hero power this turn. But then if they clear it, purify his maul next turn, maybe with a blessing of might as well, leading into a fungal man. It doesn't work because they've cleared it off.
Das hier.
Gonna go with the damage instead. Just put as much of this into the face as possible, and it makes sense. You know, none of these cards have been dealt with yet.
So, irgendein Ratonenzettel-Schinken-Ding. Was ist das hier?
We might actually have to see IAB power played this turn.
And I think if this was one mana higher for silent for Kaius, there was actually a consideration of
Was suchen hier die Belege auf meiner Seite?
Because then they would be less likely to go for hero power reckless flurry. Because you want this board to appear as unthreatening as possible, so that you can go purify as maul and then fungal mancer. Because that 1-2 punch that Bulgaria is going to deliver is really threatening.
Brauche ich alles hier nicht, ey. Sag mal, ist das jetzt irgendwie hier... Warum werden die ganzen Zettel eigentlich immer nur bei mir hier abgelegt? Das ist genauso wie auf meinem Tisch. Da sollte eigentlich normalerweise auch nichts abgelegt werden und dennoch tun's alle. Ja, aber Mama macht es irgendwie auch mal gelegentlich gerne.
Genauso, man legt nicht immer irgendwelchen alten Kram an, ja. Hier stelle ich so lange zu dir und dann vergessen es dann und dann...
Jedes
Oder dann
Mal.
heißt es meistens mal Feuer. Also,
Ja, am Arsch, ey.
ich leg nur mal irgendwie alles zusammen.
But as soon as you get level down, if they have it, it's just you're over, it's done.
Ich weiß doch immer nicht hier genau wohin mit dem ganzen Schrott, ey. Das war für, keine Ahnung. Ich hab doch keine Ahnung mehr, für was das hier war. Vielleicht könnte man das hier irgendwie nehmen für irgendwas. Also ich persönlich brauche es eigentlich ja nicht. Zu viele Teller, es werden immer zu viele Teller immer hier.
Also wie das ganze Zebra.
maximize
Mama auch
damage
mögen,
whilst
das
also
ist
maintaining sustainability on the board. How do we maintain
Die sind ja die
the ability to keep
Ist
our
irgendwie noch
minions
ein
down?
Haribo,
The minion without
brauche ich
divine
nicht.
shield, I think it's the perfect way
Habt
to
ihr noch irgendwie was schmecken?
Pressure. If there's no brawl, Kaius cannot do anything about this, and there is no
Das ist von
brawl.
meinem Dings hier.
This is looking to me. This is looking
Scheiße,
down.
ist so
But
voll.
like Bulgaria might actually be about
Yeah,
to
ich hab's
beat
gestern geschafft,
Singapore,
den
knocking
Aachen
them
zu
out.
Yay.
The Hearthstone Global Games.
Und dann ist das erste, was ich finde, und Thema ein schwarzer
healing up
Drachen.
to 14 and taking out the fungal mantle, sorry. And attacking would bring them up to 17.
Ja, das sind die ganzen
Und hast du dir schon deinen
6, 8, 9.
Zetteldinger hier.
Lethal, I believe, on the following turn.
Segenspruch, dein Gebet, was auch immer schon
With Leroy
ausgedacht.
Jenkins.
Ja, was?
Na,
Silencing
dein
the
Segen,
4-1,
dein Segen, dein
handcuff
Gebet.
shield slam the 2-2.
I guess
Nee, gar nicht.
Yeah.
brings them up to 15 though, and that does mean
Muss mal langes sein.
Leroy is
that's going to be closing out the game.
Aber was sind die ganzen Zettel hier, die man mir irgendwie hier gegeben hat? Was ist das hier? Warum soll liegt das hier bei mir?
Singapore and qualifying through to the decider match.
Das hier genauso.
Handshakes, high fives. They look at that. They are thrilled with themselves. But for Singapore, the journey is over. And once again, we get to see the Bulgarian flag being waved as we have done every single week they've won throughout the group stages.
Dinger, die finde ich auch mal irgendwie.
Das war noch nie
In this tournament and the reason they've been doing so. Again, I just thought they played some good.
Jetzt habe ich gar nicht mehr mitbekommen, was jetzt war da, ey.
Not really a misstep, putting on the pressure as
Genau.
much as possible. I think just a really good understanding of those matchups. The top one
Nicht wirklich.
an immensely
Doch,
difficult
ich würde schon ganz gerne irgendwo wissen, was jetzt war.
not quite lethal, I believe, on the following turn.
Boah! Das ist ja wirklich ein ziemlich kurzes Match.
Silencing the 4-1.
Hat er nicht ein paar Minuten auf 11 geprügelt? Was zur Hölle?
Yeah.
Brings them up to 15 though, and that does mean
Alter, es geht noch ein paar Minuten und der Paladin hat den Krieger schon auf 11 Punkte geprügelt.
The underdogs of this series and the whole HGG
Ey, jetzt,
Richtige Schnitzel.
ey, was geht denn da ab? Alter, was hat denn der gerade da für Glück mit den Karten? Bam, bam, bam.
They have done it. Handshakes, high fives.
Holy sh...
Look at that. They are
Das waren bestimmt so 5 Minuten oder so?
every single week that they've won throughout the group stages.
patriotism really
Heilige Scheiße.
of Bulgaria
So schnell kann er speziell nicht.
in this
Ja.
tournament and a reason they've been doing so